Everyone. So we're back at it reading Ban This Book by Alan Gratz. And so far we have lovely Amy Ann Olinger, and she just found out that her favorite book, The Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankwiller, has been taken off the bookshelf, and she is not happy. So let's find out what happens. All right, Ponies and Pink Tutus. Our two huge Rottweilers, Flotsam and Jetsam, met us at the door to lick my face. They were so tall they came up to my armpits. Off, off, I said, trying to pet them so they knew I had said hello. They barked and wagged their tails, squirming around in front of us, so much I couldn't move. I had to follow my mother like she was an icebreaker ship, pushing past the dogs into the kitchen. Dad was there stirring two pots on the stove and baking something in the oven and making a salad. Dad was tall and thin, with skin as dark as mine, and muscular arms from laying bricks all day. He had his opera music playing loud again, some Italian lady singing like somebody was shaking her by her shoulders the entire time. Spaghetti in 15 minutes, he told us. Alexis, he yelled, come sit at the table. I've asked her 3 times. I can't, Alexis called from our room down the hall. I'm changing for ballet. Amy Ann, will you do it, honey? Dad asked. No, Alexis always has some excuse not to do what she's told. Make her do it. That's what I wanted to say. But I knew from experience it didn't make any sense to argue. It never had. It was easier for everybody concerned if I just went ahead and did it. I dumped my backpack on the floor, went to the cabinet for the plates. Mom disappeared down the hall to change out of her work clothes. How was chess club? Dad asked me, and I cringed a little. I took the late bus home every day because I told my parents I was staying late for different clubs, but I wasn't really in the chess club, or the anime club, or the robotics club. I wasn't in any club. I just sat in my favorite corner of the library and read books until I had to leave. It was the only time I ever got any peace and quiet. Fine, I lied. Angelina, my youngest sister, came galloping into the kitchen on all fours. She was a pudgy 5-year-old with Mom's dimples, Dad's darker skin, and her hair pulled back into a fuzzy ponytail on the back of her head. Angelina had decided she was going to grow up to be a pony, and for the past few weeks she'd been practicing all day. She made pa-pum, 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 pa-pum sound with her lips and nudged me with her head. Hello, Angelina, I said. Rainbow Sparkle, she told me. Rainbow Sparkle was her pony name. I was definitely not calling her Rainbow Sparkle. The dogs thought Angelina was playing with them, and they started hopping around and barking at her right where I was walking. I had to hold the plates up high not to drop them as I squeezed back and forth. Angelina and the dogs got under Dad's feet, and he stepped back from the stove with a scowl. Okay, I need all ponies and dogs out of the kitchen while I finish dinner, Dad said. Amy Ann, can you do something with them? Why am I supposed to do something with them? I'm not the one crawling around on the floor getting them all riled up. That's what I wanted to say. But of course, I didn't. I just grabbed Roller Girl out of my backpack, led Angelina into the hall by her imaginary lead, and called Flotsam and Jetsam to follow me to the room I shared with Alexis. Alexis's clothes were all over the floor of the bedroom, even on my side of the room, and she was holding onto the corner of the bed to practice arabesques in her pink tutu. Alexis, the middle sister, was a pretty brown color somewhere between Mom and Dad, and had her pink highlighted hair cut short and straightened. A pop song blasted from her CD player. I kicked her clothes across the imaginary line that separated the two sides of our room. Use your own bed, I told her for the 1,000th time. I can't, she told me for the 1,000th time. Your bedpost is exactly the same height as the ballet bar. Too bad, I said, but she didn't let go. I punched the eject button on the CD player, nabbed the CD, and jumped up on my bed. Alexis scrambled after me, reaching for the CD. Mom, Amy Ann took the music again, Alexis yelled. It's my room too, and I want to read, I told her. Amy Ann, Mom called. Amy Ann, give your sister back her CD. Why? It's half my room too, I wanted to say. And I don't want to listen to Taylor Swift while I read. But I knew it wouldn't do any good. Alexis always got to practice her ballet whenever she wanted to. I tossed the CD like a frisbee onto Alexis's bed. She dove across the room for it. I called the dogs, and they followed me as I stomped into the hall. Mom had changed clothes and was headed to the kitchen when her phone rang. "Don't answer that," Dad yelled. Mom took her phone out of her pocket and looked at it. "It's the office." "Definitely don't answer that," Dad yelled. Mom answered it. "Hello? Yes." "You're kidding. Redo the presentation? Really? Before the end of the day tomorrow? But it's not due until... No, I'm home already, but about to sit down with the family and..." She covered the phone with her hand and called out to my dad. "Jamal, can you please turn the music down?" "Told you not to answer it," Dad said. He didn't turn down the crazy opera singer. Flotsam and Jetsam tried to run into the kitchen again to mooch for food, and I had to drag them with me into the living room. But I couldn't even hide out there. Angelina had pulled all the cushions off the furniture to make a barn for herself, and she'd used Mom's paper shredder again to slice up paper to make fake hay. Today, she found something to build a fence out of, too. "My books!" I said. The few books I owned were all propped up against each other in a half circle outside her barn. The spines twisted out of shape. I started to snatch them up, and Angelina wailed, "No, no, I need those, I need those!" She tried to grab them back from me. "You're not using them." "Well, you're not using your room." I told her, "How about I just go in there and read?" Alexis and I shared a room because 5 years ago, Mom and Dad decided our house wasn't crazy enough and they needed another kid. So Angelina got a room all to herself because she was the baby and had a different bedtime. I would have been happy to go to bed at 8 o'clock every night and read if it meant I could have my own space. But I knew there was no way Alexis and Angelina would share a room together. I marched towards Angelina's room with my arm full of books. "No, no, that's my room. You can't," Angelina screamed. Mom stuck her head into the room. "Girls, please, I'm on the phone with work." Angelina wrapped herself around my leg. "Amy Ann took my fence, and now she's going in my room," she wailed. "Amy Ann, I need you to be the mature one here," Mom said. "But..." Mom's mean frowned at me. "Fix this," she said, and went back to her phone call. So I had to give Alexis his CD back, but Angelina didn't have to give my books back? How fair was that? And Mom didn't understand why I wanted to run away? I turned away from Angelina's room and shoved the books back at her. "Here, if you bend any of the pages or covers, you're dead, horsey. Understand?" "Pony," Angelina said, arranging the books back into a fence. "Amy Ann," Dad called, "I thought I asked you to keep those dogs out of the kitchen. They're licking the floor again." I drooped. The dogs had slipped away from me while I was arguing with Angelina. "Flotsam, Jetsam, come!" I yelled. In the hall, Mom put a finger to her other ear and frowned. "I'm sorry, can you say that again?" I led the dogs into the bathroom and shut the door. It was the only place left where I could get away from everyone. I sat down on the closed toilet seat with a huff and pulled Jet and Flot to me, hugging them. They were the only ones who had ever really listened to me. With everybody else, I just stopped trying. I don't suppose you guys have found a magical rabbit hole I can fall down or dug up an enchanted amulet in the backyard that leads to other worlds, have you? Flotsam and Jetsam licked my face and wagged their stubby tails, which I took as a no. "At least we can hide in here until dinner," I told them. The door rattled. "Mom! Mom!" Alexis yelled. "Amy Ann's hogging the bathroom and I have to pee!" Seems like quite a household. Let's see what happens. It speaks. At dinner, Alexis twirled her spaghetti on her fork like a ballerina, making it plie into the sauce. Angelina whined and ate without using her hands. I decided to get on the computer after dinner and look up how far I'd have to walk to run away to the public library. "This presentation thing means I'm going to have to work late all this week," Mom said. "I'll need you to pick up Angie from Miss Targart's," she told Dad. "I can do every day but Thursday," he said. "I've got that appointment to see about rebricking that house in North Raleigh. I should be able to take Alexis to ballet, though." Mom sighed. I'll have to find someone to cover for me. Anything else? I want to go to the school board meeting on Thursday, I wanted to say. And this time I actually said it. Mom and Dad looked at me in surprise. A school board meeting? Dad said. Are you thinking about running for office, kiddo? No, I said. I just need to go. Thursday is already very busy, sweetheart, Mom said. Your dad has his appointment. Alexis has ballet at 7. Angelina has her play date that afternoon. I've got a big presentation at work due next week. But they're going to ban my favorite book, I told them. Who is? Dad asked. The school board. Why? Mom said. Is this something you shouldn't be reading in the first place? No, it's from the mixed up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweller. I've read it like 100 times, but now it's not on the shelf anymore. It's my favorite book. It sounds like you're pretty fired up about this, Mom said. I guess I was. Everybody at the table is looking at me. Angelina has even stopped pretending to be a pony. Mom and Dad glanced across the table at each other, saying something to each other without saying anything, like they sometimes do. And Dad said, I guess I could take her, if you can pick up Angelina and take Alexis to ballet too. I can't do both, Mom said, but we can ask Mrs. Mitchell if Angelina can stay for dinner. And maybe Alexis can come back to the office with me until it's time for ballet. Alexis and Angelina protested. Angelina said Miss Mitchell's food was too spicy, and Alexis always thought Mom's office was too cold. But Mom and Dad told them they would both survive, and that was that. I was going to the school board meeting. I couldn't believe it. For once, I had actually said what I was thinking, and something was happening about it. I felt a little flutter in my chest, like that split second when you're peering over the top of a hill on a roller coaster, and then the weight of it grabs you and drags you down, and you're scared but really excited. I wanted to close my eyes and throw my hands in the air and scream, but that might have freaked everybody else out. Then again, maybe nobody here in Crazy Town would even notice. Common sense. Thursday came quick, and suddenly Dad was driving me to school board meeting in his truck. The school board meeting where I was supposed to tell everybody why I like from the mixed up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweller. With every mile that passed, I regretted opening my mouth a little bit more. The school board meeting was in a room on the 3rd floor of a big gray building downtown. There was a curved table at the front where some of the school board members were already sitting, and 2 sections of uncomfortable seats facing them with an aisle running down the middle. And right at the front of the aisle was a podium with a microphone on it. The microphone I was supposed to get up and talk into. The folded piece of paper with a speech I had written about from the mixed up files crinkled in my pocket. I've only ever stolen one thing in my entire life, a lollipop. From the grocery store when I was 4. I'd snatched it while we were in the checkout line and stuck it in my pocket. But I was old enough to know it was wrong, and that lollipop felt radioactive the whole way out the door and into the parking lot. I felt like everybody could see it, like everybody knew I was a bad girl. It burned so hot that I broke down in tears and confessed before we even got to the car. That piece of notebook paper in my pocket felt like that right now. I was surprised it hadn't set off all kinds of alarms on the way into the building. How was I ever going to stand up and read what I'd written in front of all those people? Mrs. Jones, the librarian, saw us come in and hurried over to give me a hug. She was wearing a black dress with white polka dots tonight, a big black polka dots for earrings. Oh, honey, I'm so glad you came tonight, she said. Amy Ann's our own honorary librarian, she told Dad. I think she spends more time in the library than I do. I was suddenly worried. Mrs. Jones was going to let it slip that I hung out there every afternoon instead of going to clubs. She didn't know I'd been lying to Mom and Dad. She held out her hand to Dad instead. Opal Jones, she said. Opal's a pretty name, Dad said, shaking her hand. Mrs. Jones blushed. Grown-up ladies always acted weird around my dad. Mom says it's because he has bricklayer arms and movie star smile. My parents gave me an interesting first name because our last name was Smith, Mrs. Jones said. Then I went and married a man named Jones, she shrugged. What can you do? So what's all this book banning? Dad asked. Mrs. Jones took a deep breath. She had big lungs to fill. It's not the first time we've had a book challenged in the library, but it's the first time the school board has gone over my head to pull a book from the shelves all by themselves. And it's all because of that woman there. Dad followed her gaze to a petite, pretty white woman with short blonde hair. She wore a matching lavender skirt and jacket. She doesn't look like a book burner, Dad said. That is Miss Sarah Spencer, a pillar of our fair community, Miss Jones said. She's a member of the Shelburne Elementary PTA, the Shelburne Elementary Playground Redevelopment Committee, the Raleigh Race for the Cure Foundation, the North Carolina Art Museum Board, and the North Carolina State Opry Society. Oh, my dad said, suddenly interested because of the opera. My stomach seized up, and I grabbed his arm. I did not want him to start singing at the school board meeting. More importantly, said Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Spencer and her husband are rich, which means the school board listens to her even more than they listen to me, the person they hired to do the job. I didn't know Miss Spencer, but I knew the boy in the seat behind her. His name was Trey. He was in Mr. Vaughn's 4th grade homeroom with me, but he and I had a history. He had the same blonde hair as his mom, only messier, and wore an untucked blue polo shirt and jeans. He looked up from the notebook he was drawing in, caught me staring at him, and quickly looked away. One of the school board members called the meeting to order, and we sat down with Mrs. Jones. The seats in the audience weren't even half full. The board members talked about some boring stuff that only future lawyer Rebecca would have been interested in. And then it was time for public comment. That meant people could come up to the podium to speak. I sank down in my chair a little, the paper in my pocket crinkling louder than firecrackers to me. Dr. Opal Jones is our first speaker, one of the school board members said. I sat up. She's a doctor? I whispered. Not a medical doctor, Dad said. Library science, probably. There were library scientists? My eyes went wide as I imagined librarians in lab coats looking for books under microscopes, like crime scene investigators on TV. Wild-hair librarian scientists cataloging books with giant machines that crackled with electricity. Mad librarian scientists swirling new words around in glass beakers. I was so busy imagining what I would be like to be a library scientist that I missed most of Mrs. Jones' speech. But worse than ignoring the requests for reconsideration forms and the whole system the school board put in place to review challenges to books, Mrs. Jones was saying, is the larger question of intellectual freedom. Some of the school board members rolled their eyes and shifted in their seats like we all do in Mr. Vaughn's class when he starts telling us how we're all going to need to know how to use fractions one day, so we better pay attention. Mrs. Jones didn't seem to notice. It's our job as educators to expose our children to as many different kinds of books and as many different points of view as possible. That means letting them read books that are too easy for them or too hard for them. That means letting them read books that challenge them or do nothing but entertain them. And yes, it means letting students read books with things in them that we might disagree with and letting them make up their own minds about things, which is downright scary sometimes, but that's what a good education is all about. Some of the school board members were shuffling papers and checking their phones. None of them seemed to be paying much attention to her. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Jones said, every parent has the right to decide what their child can and can't read. What they cannot do is make the decision for everyone else. I respectfully ask that the school board overturn the arbitrary closed-door decision to remove these books, and to require any parent still concerned about library materials to follow the established reconsideration policy set up by this board. Thank you. Most of the school board members were looking at the table in front of them when she finished, not at Mrs. Jones. One of them coughed. Thank you, Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Spencer, you want to speak? Trey's mom went to the podium. Unlike Mrs. Jones, she didn't have a piece of paper to read from. Ladies and gentlemen of the school board, I grew up in this county. I was a student at Shelburne Elementary once, she said. And no, I won't say how long ago. A couple of the school board members laughed. Back then, the school library was a safe place, a place where parents could trust that their students were going to pick a book that taught them how to lie. Pick up a book that, sorry about that. A place where parents could trust their children weren't going to pick up a book that taught them how to lie or steal or cheat. They weren't going to find a book that told them more about their bodies than they were ready to know at the age of 10 or 9 or 5. They weren't going to find a book that showed them it was all right to talk back and be disrespectful to adults. Call me old-fashioned, but I don't think school should be a place where parents' authority is undermined. I think it should be a place where it is reinforced. I frowned. No book I've read in the library had taught me to lie or to steal or cheat. Every kid who had any kind of brains knew how to do all that stuff already. And I was respectful to adults. I always did whatever they told me to do, even when I knew it was a load of pony poop. Mrs. Jones never used the word censorship, but it was there behind everything she said, Mrs. Spencer said. I'm not for censorship. I'm for common sense. We have to protect our children. It's not censorship to keep things away from children that aren't age appropriate. It's common sense. I'm sure Mrs. Jones would call it censorship to keep adult magazines filled with sex out of her library. Sex? Who spelled that out? Did she think the kids in this room had never heard the word sex before, or that we couldn't spell? This is just 11 books, Mrs. Spencer said. That leaves thousands more in the elementary school library for our children to enjoy. Far better books, too. I have only asked to remove those books that are inappropriate or have no redeeming value. You made the right decision to remove these books from the library, and I hope you can trust in your own wisdom and common sense as parents to see that no child is ever exposed to them again. Thank you. Beside us, Mrs. Jones cleared her throat and shifted in her seat. Thank you, Mrs. Spencer. One of the board members. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak about this issue? He asked. Mrs. Jones looked over at me and smiled. Dad gave me a questioning look. This was it. This was why I had the piece of paper in my pocket. Why I had gotten my parents to rearrange their schedules to bring me here. Why I was in this boring meeting room at 7 o'clock at night, on a school night, instead of sitting in my bed reading a book. They both expected me to get up and say something, to tell the school board why they shouldn't ban Mrs. Frank Weller. All I had to do was stand up and walk to the podium. My heart thumped in my chest and I stared straight ahead. Anyone? The school board members asked again. The school board waited. Miss Spencer waited, Miss Jones waited, Dad waited. I sucked on my braids. All right then, the school board said. There will be no further comment on the matter. I move to uphold this board's decision to remove those books from the Shelburne Elementary Library. Seconded, someone said. No, I was supposed to say something. I wanted to say something, but I hadn't. I couldn't. All in favor? Aye, a bunch of them said. All opposed? Nay, 2 of them said. Motion carries. Anyone else have any other issues they'd like us to hear? And just like that, it was over. One of the other adults in the audience got up to complain about how much homework their kids brought home, but I barely listened. That was it. My one chance to speak up, my one chance to tell them why my favorite book was so great, and I had done what I had always did. I sat there and said nothing. My face was so hot I thought I would catch fire. I grabbed onto the bottom of my metal chair on both sides and hung on. I couldn't even look at Dad or Mrs. Jones. The school board moved on to talk about bids on plumbers for another school, and my dad huffed. I don't think we need to sit around for the rest of this. We've already wasted enough time. I nodded, trying not to cry. I'm going to wait till the end, Mrs. Jones whispered. Bend the ear of 1 or 2 of those board members. Good luck, Dad told her. I looked up at Mrs. Jones. I slid past down the aisle. I'm sorry, I told her. Oh, there's nothing for you to be sorry about at all, honey. She took my hand and squeezed it. You didn't do anything. I know. That's the problem, I wanted to say, but I didn't. So hopefully you're enjoying this book, and we'll be reading more soon.